Welcome to Luxury Stories 24/7, where every story is full of emotions, lessons, and unforgettable moments. Get ready for a journey of love, betrayal, and healing. Let the story begin. Once upon a time, in a peaceful kingdom deep in the heart of Igbo land, there lived a wise and powerful king named Igwe Obinna. He ruled the land with fairness, and the people respected him deeply. His palace was large and beautiful, with tall walls, big iron gates, and servants who bowed every time they saw him walk past. By his side was his lovely wife, Queen Adore, who everyone believed was kind and humble. For many years the royal couple had no children. They prayed, fasted, and visited priests to ask the gods for a child. Finally, the good news came. Queen Adore was pregnant. The palace danced with joy, and the people of the land sang and celebrated. But behind the queen's smiles was a deep fear. Everyone expected her to give birth to a son. Only a male child could take over the throne after the king. The elders, the council, and even the queen mother made it clear that a boy must come out of her womb. Queen Adore became restless as her due date came close. She feared what would happen if she gave birth to a girl. She had heard stories of queens who were sent away or forgotten simply because they gave birth to daughters. She couldn't allow that to happen to her. She loved her crown. She loved her title. She loved the power that came with being queen. One rainy night, her labor pains started. The royal midwife, a sharp-eyed woman named Nwakego, was called in to help. The queen screamed in pain as thunder roared outside. The palace maids ran up and down, boiling hot water and preparing herbs. Finally, after hours of struggle, the cry of a newborn baby filled the room. Queen Adore looked at the child in Nwakego's arms. It was a girl. Her heart sank. "No," she whispered, sweat pouring from her face. "It cannot be." Nwakego wrapped the baby in white cloth and placed her gently in the queen's arms. "She is beautiful, my queen," she said, smiling. "The gods have blessed you." Queen Adore turned her face away. "You don't understand," she said in a shaking voice. "I needed a boy. They will never forgive me for this." Just then, another servant ran into the room. "Midwife," she said quickly. "The slave girl, Mukpuluma, in the servants' quarters. She is also in labor." Nwakego's eyes widened. She looked at the queen. The same thought entered both their minds at once. "Go," the queen said slowly. "See what she gives birth to. If it's a boy, come back at once. Don't let anyone touch the child." Nwakego left quickly, her heart beating fast. When she got to the small hut where Mukpuluma lay, the girl was crying in pain. She was a young girl, no more than 17. Her pregnancy was a result of something she never spoke about. Some believed a palace guard had forced her. Others whispered that she had a secret lover. But no one really cared. She was a slave. Her pain was not important to them. Minutes later, the baby was born. A healthy baby boy. Nwakego stared at the child and whispered, "Oh gods, forgive me." She wrapped him up and rushed back to the queen's chambers, hiding the baby under her wrapper. The queen sat up at once. "It's a boy?" Nwakego nodded. The queen's eyes shone with a mix of fear and excitement. "Then do it. Give me that one. Take mine away." "My queen," Nwakego said, her voice shaking, "are you sure? This is dangerous. If the truth ever comes out—" "Silence," Queen Adore snapped. "Do you want me to be disgraced? Do you want me to be thrown away like useless cloth? Do you want them to say the gods did not bless me? No one must ever know about this." "But the slave girl, she will not know. She is weak. She will think her baby died during childbirth." Nwakego stood frozen for a moment, then slowly obeyed. She took the real princess, the queen's daughter, and wrapped her in rags. She handed the slave's baby boy to Queen Adore, who smiled for the first time that night. The next morning the palace woke up to the news. "The queen has given birth to a son," the town criers shouted. "A prince is born, a future king." Drums were beaten, goats were slaughtered, people danced in the streets. Elders came from far and wide to greet the queen and the newborn. The baby was named Ifediora, meaning what we gain from suffering. In a small corner of the palace, Mukpuluma lay on her mat, her face pale and her body tired. Nwakego stood beside her with a blank face. "Your child did not survive," Nwakego said coldly. Mukpuluma's eyes widened. No, that cannot be. I heard him cry. I heard—" "You were dreaming," Nwakego interrupted. "Sleep. You need strength." Tears rolled down the girl's cheeks. She believed the midwife. She had no choice. Who would believe a slave girl over the royal midwife? And so the real princess was taken far away from the palace. A poor old woman who lived in the village nearby was paid to raise the child as her own. She named the girl Obianuju, meaning born into plenty, not knowing the child's true identity. Years passed. In the palace, Prince Ifediora grew up in luxury. He had everything he wanted: horses, toys, servants, and respect. The king loved him. The queen worshipped him. The people hailed him as the future ruler, but not everyone was happy. Nwakego, the midwife, could not sleep well at night. Her heart was heavy with guilt. She avoided looking at the prince. Each time she saw him, she remembered the face of the real princess, those innocent eyes, so calm and full of light. Meanwhile, Obianuju, the lost princess, grew up in the old woman's house. Though the woman was poor, she treated the girl like gold. Obianuju was smart, kind, and strong. She helped in the farm, fetched water, and cared for animals. She always asked why she didn't look like the woman who called her daughter, but the woman would only smile and say, "You are special, my child." As the years went by, strange things started happening in the palace. Prince Ifediora was growing wild and arrogant. He disrespected his teachers. He looked down on the poor. He slapped servants and laughed about it. The queen still protected him, but the king was beginning to worry. "This boy," King Obinna said one evening, "he has my blood, but not my heart." Queen Adore forced a smile. "He is young, my king. He will change." But in her heart, she feared he was becoming worse. One day, during a royal feast, a small accident happened. Prince Ifediora pushed a servant girl, and she fell hard. The people were angry. The king was furious. "This is not how a future king should behave," he shouted. He punished the prince for the first time, locking him in his room for 1 full week. Queen Adore was restless. And far away, in the little village hut, 16-year-old Obianuju sat under a mango tree looking at the sunset. She didn't know her whole life was built on a lie. She didn't know that she had once worn silk cloth instead of rags. She didn't know that her mother sat on a throne in a palace, pretending she never existed. But the gods had not forgotten. And soon, the truth would come out. The day of reckoning was coming, and it would begin with the one person who knew everything: Nwakego. She had kept the secret for too long, and she was ready to speak. 16 years had passed since the switch was made, and the kingdom had changed in many ways. Prince Ifediora, now a tall and handsome young man, had grown proud and careless. He walked with his head high, expecting everyone to bow to him, including elders. He no longer listened to anyone, not even the king. He enjoyed riding his horse through the village, mocking the poor and throwing coins at children like they were animals. People still respected him, but many feared what would happen when he finally became king. Queen Adore continued to protect her son, ignoring his bad behavior. She would smile and pretend not to notice when he insulted the maids or broke palace rules. But even she had started to worry. The boy had no patience, no wisdom, and no love for the people. He had become everything she never imagined. But she reminded herself why she did it, why she replaced the real princess with a boy. She had done it to stay on the throne. And now, there was no going back. In the king's chambers, Igwe Obinna sat quietly most days, staring out the window. His health had begun to fail. His voice was weaker, and his steps were slower. He had called several meetings with the Council of Elders, reminding them to guide Prince Ifediora well when he finally took the throne. But many of the elders were unsure. Some whispered among themselves, "This boy is not fit to rule." Meanwhile, in the village not far from the palace, Obianuju lived a quiet and humble life with Mama Olie, the old woman who raised her. Obianuju was known in the village for her beauty, calm spirit, and hard-working nature. Though she had no royal clothes or golden jewelry, she carried herself with dignity and grace. Many said she looked like a child from a rich home, even though she had never known her true parents. She often helped the villagers with their work, and they loved her deeply. She read stories to children, helped old women carry firewood, and visited the sick. One day, a visitor from the palace came to the village with a royal message. He had fallen from his horse and broken his leg. Obianuju rushed to him with herbs and treated his wound carefully. The man was surprised by how gentle and wise she was. "Where did you learn to do all this?" he asked. "I don't know," she said, smiling. "It's just something inside me." When the man returned to the palace, he couldn't stop talking about the kind village girl who helped him. "There's something special about her," he told one of the palace guards. "She's not like the others." But in the palace, things were beginning to shake. Nwakego, the old midwife, was now growing weaker by the day. Her bones ached, and her eyes dimmed. She had kept the secret for 16 long years. Each day she carried the weight of the lie like a heavy stone on her chest. She watched Prince Ifediora walk the palace like a god, and her heart burned. She had tried to speak once when the boy was 12, but Queen Adare had threatened her. "If you ever say a word, I will make sure your tongue is cut out," the queen had warned. "Do not forget, you were part of it too." And so Nwakego kept silent. But now she could feel her time on earth growing short. One night she woke up from a bad dream. In the dream, the gods stood before her, angry and disappointed. "You hid the truth," they said, "and now the kingdom is falling." She sat up in bed, sweating. "I must tell someone before I die," she whispered. The next morning, Nwakego sent a message to one of the elders of the king's council, an honest man named Ozoemena. She told him she needed to speak with him in private. When he came, she made him swear with his life that he would keep her words until the time was right. Then she told him everything: the night of the birth, the switch, the slave girl, the real princess. Ozoemena's hands shook as he listened. "This cannot be true," he said, stunned. "It is the truth," Nwakego said firmly. "And the real princess, she is alive. She lives in the village with an old woman. Her name is Obianuju." Ozoemena left quietly, his mind spinning. He couldn't believe what he had heard. He had always suspected that Prince Ifediora lacked the royal heart, but he never imagined the boy wasn't royal at all. He decided to visit the village himself. When he arrived, he saw Obianuju helping a pregnant woman carry water. She smiled and greeted him with respect. "Papa, come and sit. Let me get you something to drink," she said kindly. Ozoemena's heart pounded. Her face, her voice, her presence. Everything about her screamed royalty. That evening he returned to the palace and asked for a secret meeting with the king. Igwe Obinna was lying on a mat, wrapped in thick cloth. His voice was faint, but he agreed to listen. As Ozoemena spoke, the king's eyes widened. When he finished, the king was silent for a long time. "If what you say is true," the king said softly, "then we have been living a lie." "Your Majesty, the time to correct it is now," Ozoemena said. "The gods have kept her alive for a reason." The king nodded. "Bring her to me." The next morning, a royal chariot was sent to the village. Obianuju was shocked. She had never seen so many horses and guards in her life. Mama Oli held her hand tightly. "They say the king wants to see you," the chief guard told her. "Do not be afraid." Obianuju entered the chariot, confused and nervous. When she arrived at the palace, Queen Adare nearly fainted when she saw her. The girl looked exactly like her own mother. The same eyes, the same lips, the same quiet strength. But Queen Adare said nothing. She watched from behind the curtains as Obianuju walked through the palace gates. Obianuju was led into the king's chambers. Igwe Obina looked at her and tears filled his eyes. He didn't know how, but something inside him whispered, "This is my child." He asked her questions about her life, her dreams, her thoughts. Each answer touched his heart. At the end of their talk, he called for Nwakago and Ozoemena. "Is this the girl?" he asked. They both nodded. "Then the gods have spoken," the king said. "This is my daughter." He reached out and held her hand. Obianuju froze. I don't understand." "You were born in this palace," the king said. "You are the real princess of this land." Obianuju's eyes filled with tears. She turned to look at Mama Oli, who stood by the door, speechless. "My child," the old woman said. "I didn't know. Forgive me." That night, the palace was quiet. Queen Adore sat in her chambers, shaking. She knew her secret had been revealed. Everything she had done was about to come crashing down. She looked at the portrait of her son on the wall. He was not the prince. He was not the king. And she had brought this shame upon herself. In the hallway, guards whispered about the new girl who had arrived. "She looks like royalty," one said. "Yes," the other replied. "Maybe the gods have sent her to save us." The winds had changed, and nothing would ever be the same again. The whole palace was in confusion. Word spread quickly among the guards and maids that the girl who had arrived from the village was not just any girl. She was the real daughter of the king and queen. Some believed it, others did not. But the king had spoken, and when Igwe Obina spoke, the kingdom listened. Obianuju could not sleep that night. She sat quietly in the royal guest room, looking out of the window. The soft wind touched her face as thoughts ran through her mind. Her whole life had changed in just one day. All this time she had believed she was just a poor girl living with an old woman in a small hut. But now she had been told she was a princess. She didn't know whether to feel happy or angry. She missed Mama Oli and the peaceful village, and now she was inside a golden prison full of secrets. In another part of the palace, Queen Adore was pacing up and down her chamber. Her hands shook as she stared at her reflection in the mirror. Her lies were catching up with her, and her heart beat faster each time someone knocked at her door. She knew the king would soon summon her. Prince Ifediora, who had always walked with pride and arrogance, noticed that people were no longer bowing as quickly as before. Some servants whispered behind his back. One guard even looked him in the eyes and didn't kneel. It made him angry, but it also made him afraid. He stormed into his mother's room. "Mother, what is going on?" he asked sharply. "Why is everyone looking at me like I'm a stranger? Why is that girl still here?" Queen Adar sat down slowly. She looked up at her son and tears filled her eyes. "Ifediora," she said softly, "you must prepare your heart. There are things you need to know." "What things?" he asked. She took a deep breath. "You are not who you think you are." He stepped back. "What do you mean?" "You were not born to me," she said. "You were born to a slave girl. I switched you the night you were born. You were placed in my arms so that I could raise you as a prince, but you were never meant to wear the crown." Silence. Ifediora stood frozen. His lips trembled, but no words came out. "You lied to me?" he finally said, his voice shaking. "You lied to everyone?" "I had no choice," Queen Ador cried. "They wanted a male child. They would have rejected me. I didn't do it to hurt you. I did it to survive." Ifediora felt like the walls were closing in. "You made me live a lie," he whispered. "You gave me a life that doesn't belong to me." Queen Adar reached out to him, but he stepped away. Without another word, he turned and walked out of the room. The next morning, the king called a private meeting in the throne room. Only a few trusted elders were present, along with Obianuju, Queen Adaure, Prince Ifediora, Nwakego, Ozoemena, and Mama Olie, who had been brought from the village. Igwe Obina sat quietly, his face tired but firm. "I have listened to everyone," he began. "I have searched my heart, and I believe the truth must be faced. Obianuju is my daughter. She is the true princess of this land." Obianuju bowed her head, still overwhelmed by it all. Queen Adaure spoke next. Her voice was weak, full of guilt. "I confess to everything. I switched the babies. I was afraid of being rejected. I was wrong. I ask for mercy." The elders murmured among themselves. Igwe Obina turned to Ifediora. "My son." "I am not your son," he said bitterly. "I am just a mistake." "No," the king said gently. "You are not a mistake. You were innocent in all of this. You were just a baby. You were raised here, and I still have love in my heart for you." Ifediora looked down, his eyes filled with tears. For the first time in his life, he felt truly alone. Then the king turned to Obianuju. "You are my child, and I want you to take your place." "But your majesty," one elder said, "she did not grow up here. She knows nothing about palace life." "She knows enough," the king replied. "She knows kindness, humility, and wisdom. That is what a true leader needs." The council agreed, and the announcement was made the next day. Obianuju would be trained to become the queen in future, while Prince Ifediora would no longer be called heir to the throne. It was a difficult decision, and many people in the kingdom were shocked. Some wept for Ifediora, others rejoiced for Obianuju, but one thing was certain: truth had won. Prince Ifediora locked himself in his room. He didn't eat. He didn't speak. Everything he knew had been taken away. Days passed, and he finally came out and walked into the garden, where Obianuju was sitting. She stood up when she saw him. "Ifediora," she said softly. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice low. "I didn't know the truth. I didn't know I was living your life." "It wasn't your fault," she replied kindly. "You were just a child. We both were." He looked at her with red eyes. "Do you hate me?" "No," she said. "I don't hate you. I just hope you will find peace." For a moment they stood in silence. Then he turned and walked away. Later that week, Ifediora came to the king and queen. He bowed deeply. "I will leave the palace," he said. "I want to find my true purpose, away from here." Queen Adaure cried, but she did not stop him. She knew this was the beginning of her punishment. Ifediora left the palace quietly, with only a small bag and no guards. No one knew where he went. Obianuju remained in the palace, learning how to speak to the council, how to handle matters of the land, and how to deal with people. She learned quickly. The people grew to love her. As for Queen Ador, she was no longer treated as the beloved queen. Many servants ignored her. Elders stopped bowing. Even the guards barely looked her way. She had become a shadow in her own palace. One night, as Obianuju walked past her chamber, Queen Adaure called her. "My daughter," she said, Can you ever forgive me?" Obianuju looked at her for a long time. "I don't know if I can forgive you today," she said, "but maybe one day." Queen Adare nodded. "That is enough." The palace was calm again, but a new chapter had begun. The truth had brought pain, but also healing, and the people waited, watched, and hoped for the final path that fate would bring. A few months had passed, and the kingdom slowly settled into its new truth. Obianuju was now living as the true daughter of Igwe Obina. Though everything around her had changed, her room, her clothes, her meals, her heart remained gentle. She still walked humbly through the palace, still greeted the guards with a smile, and still knelt to greet the elders, even though they now bowed to her. The king grew weaker each day, but his heart was at peace. He would often call Obianuju to sit by his side and talk. He would tell her stories about the land, the laws, the people, and the duties of a ruler. He would look at her proudly and say, "My daughter, you were born for this." One evening he gave her a special necklace made of lion teeth and coral beads. "This belonged to your grandmother," he said softly. "She gave it to your mother when we married. It now belongs to you." Obianuju wore it with tears in her eyes. She had gained a father but lost 16 years of her true life. Still, she chose to move forward. As for Queen Adore, her life had changed completely. No one called her Lolo anymore. She was no longer allowed to sit beside the king during meetings. Her name brought whispers, not honor. She spent her days alone in her chamber, looking out the window, thinking of her many mistakes. Her only comfort came from watching Obianuju from afar. She had expected the girl to hate her, to be cruel, but Obianuju had done the opposite. She treated everyone with kindness, even her. One afternoon, Obianuju visited her quietly. "I have come to say something," Obianuju said. Queen Adore turned slowly. "Yes, my child? I have been thinking a lot, and I realize that anger is a heavy thing to carry. I may not understand why you did what you did. You hurt me, and you changed my life, but I forgive you." Queen Adore broke down in tears. "You are greater than me in every way," she said, "and I do not deserve your mercy." Obianuju held her hand gently. "Maybe not, but you're still my mother by blood, and I want to live without hate." The queen cried like a child, and that day something in her heart began to heal. Far away, in a small village near the forest, Ifediora was also going through his own journey. He had changed his name to Ebuka and lived among farmers. At first he was bitter. He blamed the queen, blamed fate, blamed the gods. But as time went on, he began to see life differently. He met poor people who were joyful. He met old men who had never been kings but lived in peace. He worked with his hands and earned his own food. Slowly, he found something he had never known before: purpose. One day, while helping an old woman build her mud house, he smiled to himself. "I may not wear the crown," he whispered, "but I have found something greater." Back in the palace, the time had come. King Obina knew he would not live much longer. He called the council and his daughter together. They sat in a large circle in the throne room, surrounded by drums and burning torches. "My people," the king said, his voice soft but clear, "the truth has come out, and the gods have shown us mercy. I may not see the many years ahead, but I have seen the light return to this land." He turned to Obianuju. "You will be queen. You will rule with wisdom and love. Promise me that." Obianuju knelt before him. "I promise, father, with all my heart." The elders blessed her. The palace bells rang. The people gathered in the courtyard and shouted her name: Obianuju, the daughter of truth, the queen of peace. A few days later, the king closed his eyes and passed on quietly in his sleep. The land mourned deeply, but they found comfort in the new queen. Obianuju wore a simple red wrapper with her grandmother's necklace on her neck as she sat on the throne for the first time. She chose not to wear a crown that day. "My people," she said gently, "I am not here to be above you. I am here to walk with you." The people wept with joy. Under her rule, the palace became a place of fairness and peace. She opened the palace gates to the poor. She built a school for girls and boys from all families. She visited villages and listened to the cries of the people. She ruled not with fear, but with heart. One morning, as she walked through the palace garden, she saw an old woman sitting alone. It was Queen Adara. "Would you like to walk with me?" Obianuju asked. The queen looked surprised. "You still want me near you?" "You were part of my story," Obianuju replied. "I won't hide you like a shameful past, but we must walk in the light now." And so they walked side by side. Obianuju continued to rule with grace and became known as one of the greatest queens in the land's history. And far away, Ifediora, now Ebeka, became a humble teacher in his village, loved by children and respected by all. The truth had caused pain, but it had also brought healing. Because truth, no matter how long it hides, always finds its voice. Lesson: no matter how sweet a lie may look in the beginning, it will always lead to pain in the end. Queen Adora's selfish act of switching babies brought sorrow to everyone, including the son she tried to protect. But truth, no matter how long it takes, always wins. We must learn to do the right thing, even when it is hard. When we build our lives on truth, we may face trouble, but we will sleep with peace in our hearts. Forgiveness, humility, and honesty are the true crowns we must all wear. Thank you so much for watching this story on Luxury Stories 24/7. We hope it touched your heart and taught you something special. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more amazing and emotional stories every day. We would love to hear from you. Share your thoughts in the comments. What did you learn? What touched you the most? Until next time, keep showing love, stay kind, and remember, every story has a lesson.